69. 69. So we're here and we've discussed already what kind of water you're allowed to use and the actual act of how to wash our hands in the morning. Now we're going to discuss the top of 69. HaChayavim banetila, those who are obligated in this mitzvah in the first place. He starts off. Obviously, men have to wash their hands. So that's not the question. The question is, who else is obligated to wash their hands? 21. Chav Aleph. Hanashim chayavot. Ladies are obligated. B'ntilat yadayim shacharit. In washing their hands in the morning. Now, you remember that a lot of this reason has to do with the tumah in the hands. Mm-hmm. And if anything, ladies, that's what the sources say, the Ateret Skanim, some other books, they write that ladies are actually the ones who probably touch the food the most at home. And therefore, obviously they're included in this mitzvah. Forget for the other reasons of the giving thanks to HaShamayim and everything else, but for a practical level of not passing tumah, they have an obligation to wash their hands as well. Vidakdeku, and they must be careful, litol shalosh pamim lesirugin, to wash 3 times alternating. V'cheni dakdeku, and they must also be careful b'chol shaar dinei netilah, and all the rest of these halachot like a man.
Is that true? I mean, he's interpreting the Shulchan Aruch, right?
What do you mean?
This is not Karo. This is
this is Rabbi David Yosef here. But he's applying. The Shulchan Aruch didn't write a Shulchan. This one for men, this is for ladies. Yeah. So he leaves it up to us to figure out who these rules apply to. Mm-hmm. I mean, this topic of who is obligated in this mitzvah is a very popular topic in halacha books because the Shulchan Aruch normally doesn't tell us. And therefore we have to come up with, is it men, ladies, under bar mitzvah, over bar mitzvah, married people, so on and so forth.
So are there commentaries that say women are not obligated?
It could be. I can look for a moment.
Okay, I'm just curious.
No, but it seems like there's an overwhelming number of people who say they must.
Okay.
So, the question now is, what about children? And this question is twofold. One, do children they're not obligated yet in mitzvot. So, do they have tumah in their hands that makes food tameh? And two, are you obligated to teach them to wash their hands in the morning? V'ra'ui, it's fitting or proper lechanech, to educate gam et haktanim, also the children, litol yedehem, to wash their hands shacharit kara'ui, in the morning properly. I mean, it's a proper thing to teach children to wash their hands in the morning.
All ages?
So here's what he's going to say, something incredible. This you don't find, I don't think, in many other places in halakha. V'afilu ktanim bioter, and even children who are exceptionally small. How small? Hamutalim ba'arisa, those who are even in a crib still. Meaning babies.
Wow. That's amazing.
Now, those of you who are Hasidim, this is obvious to you. But the rest of you who are not Hasidim, it's not so obvious that you wash a baby's hands. Hasidim have like a holy custom from the Baal Shem Tov to wash a baby's hands. But not everyone had that custom. It's proper to wash their hands for them in the morning. We do this to my little baby. Because they touch food. That's not the reason why we do it. In order so that they can grow up in purity. And they should be raised in holiness.
So Rabbi, you could apply the same thing to the candle lighting that the Rabbi instituted with children.
I agree that you can light candles. I don't agree that they can make a bracha on it. I'm not against the girls lighting candles. I'm
babies.
Right. I am against, though, people lighting with the bracha at that age. Umikol makom, but in any case, im nag'u b'ma'achal, if they touch food, kodem nitilat yadayim shacharit, before they wash their hands in the morning, ein ha'ma'achal nesach, that food does not become prohibited to us. Okay, that's the bottom line of the for children. Children don't make food tameh while touching, without washing their hands.
So it's more as a discipline.
Exactly, a chinuch to teach them. And I wanted to just dwell for a moment on this idea of raising children in holiness. It's a very important thing. I mean, I'm at the beginning of my road of raising children. I'm sure other people have already either done it or in the middle of it. Kedusha is not something to take lightly. It's not something to... like my wife, she's very strict about Kedusha. Sometimes I'll go onto my phone to hear the news or something along those lines, what's happening in Israel or whatever. Do it in a different room, not where the baby is. Why? Now, there's nothing probably wrong with the baby here in the news, but she's like, Kedusha, you should only hear things that are Kedusha. Today my wife gave a shiur, so I brought the baby into the room and I put him, he was sleeping. I said, you should be next to people who are learning Torah. You can never do too much to ensure that a child grows up in an environment of Kedusha. In a place like San Diego, you have every difficulty in the world to create a level of Kedusha for our children. Even if you try, even if it's a good home. I'm not talking about here you're a good home, you're trying to give your kids the best Jewish education you can, but Jewish education is not synonymous with Kedusha, with holiness, with purity. Those are two things you don't get at school. You don't get those at shul. You get those from the way you live in your own house. Kedusha, Tahara. Kids don't have to know everything. Someone's like, if you shelter your kids, I'm not telling you to lock your kids in a bubble, in a cage their whole life. But yeah, you don't have to be a drug addict to be able to treat people in rehab. Your kid doesn't have to experience it. If it's not, it's a crazy thing. Your kids don't all have to know everything in the world. They'll figure things out as they go through their life. Hopefully some things they'll never have to know. Chaf Bet, Halakha 22 on page 70. Who asked me this question yesterday? Zev, did you ask this? Af mishu iter yad yamin, even one who is a left-handed person. Huh?
Yeah.
Notel yad yamin tchila, he still washes his right hand first. KSH Kollel, like every other person. The Mishnah Berurah brings it down, the Malbim brings it down, the Pri Megadim brings it down, a lot, the Kavachayim. Meaning it seems to be that this here is specifically right, left in an objective fashion, not in a subjective fashion like tefillin. The reason why tefillin begins to change between right and left is because it says on your right hand. So your right hand depends who you are. But here, it doesn't have anything to do with you as much as to do with right and left in the objective fashion of the word.
Well, it's interesting how we would look at things in general that way, which are more like tefillin and which are more like netilat yadayim, because, it's in my case, it's like an aspect of proprioception. Like, for example, when we do certain prayers, we go to the left and to the right, to the forward. I will sometimes find myself unconsciously going the other way because of my way my...
That's a great example. You have to get to the root of why. Why do we bow in the Shemarizer? See, if Hashem is in front of you, so which direction do you bow first?
Right.
Left.
No,
Okay. Forward. So is it...
עושה שלום במואב,
right.
הוא ברחמן ועשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל עמו ישראל, amen, right? And then you would walk forward. The reason being that if a Kadosh Baruch Hu is standing in front of you, in proper bowing etiquette, which we don't have because we don't really bow to anybody anymore, you bow first to the person's right. And Hashem, so to speak, his right is your left.
Yeah.
Is your left.
Right.
And therefore we bow, not right, left.
Correct.
Correct. And therefore we bow to Hashem's right, which is our left. So regardless of where you are, a person who's right-handed, left-handed, it's about Hashem, not about us. It's interesting that B'Boy L'Shalom, we bow first. Boy Chala, Boy Chala. We say quietly, Toch Emunei Am Segula, and then again, Boy Chala Shabbat Malkata.
Oh yeah, you about.
Why do we start on the right and then the left? It's the exact opposite order. I'm sure there's a reason on Pi Kabbalah. In my humble opinion, it could be that Shabbat has more to do with yourself than actually with someone who's coming into the room. Shabbat HaMalkah is not necessarily in Kabbalistic lingo, it's not another being that comes into your life, but it's that extra neshama that comes to you.
What about the Shekhinah coming from that direction, from where the sun sets? When you're greeting the Shekhinah, it's a different...
Well, here we're specifically, I don't know about the Shekhinah, but here we're specifically greeting the Shabbat Queen, which is that extra neshama inside of us. So we bow right, probably because that's our...
Oh, it belongs
right.
to us.
That's my theory. I don't know that I'm right.
Yeah,
I'd have
I never
to
even thought of
look
that,
it up.
but we do it automatically.
Absolutely. So why here right, why over there left? It's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing.
Huh.
You know, the beauty about HaKadosh Baruch Hu is that He gave us a lot of details. People sometimes get frustrated with the details. But I'll tell you that there's a story. The Mishnah tells us, Rabbi Hananiah ben Akashia Omer. Rabbi Hananiah, the son of Akashia, tells us, you hear this probably all the time when they're going to say Kaddish. Ratzah HaKadosh Baruch Hu lezakot Yisrael. Hashem wanted to make the Jewish people zakayim, innocent. Lefichach, therefore, He uba lehem Torah mitzvot. He gave them a lot of Torah mitzvot, as much as He possibly could. Shneimar Adonai chavetz aman titko. Negdi Torah v'yadir, that Hashem wants to make people innocent, and therefore He gives them much Torah. So the obvious question here is, if you would give us no mitzvot, we would always be innocent, because we don't have anything we could violate. So the fact that you give us so many mitzvot, you're giving us very many ways to become guilty. So how does this Mishnah even make sense?
It occupies your mind and your actions, so that at least everything you're doing is holy.
You just mix two things together. Intentionally, unintentionally, but it's good what you said. The two good answers, there are many good answers, but the two that have always sat with me, one is the Rambam. The Rambam always sits with me. The Rambam says that that's exactly it. Because you'll never find a person who doesn't do at least one mitzvah, because there are so many ways. It could be they don't keep Shabbat, could be they don't keep, but they respect their parents. And so they're definitely going to have a mitzvah in that department. So Hashem is making everyone as innocent as they could be, because He's giving them as many options as possible to do mitzvah. That person says, I don't care about Torah, mitzvah, I don't care about my parents. But you live in Israel, so you got a mitzvah for living in Israel. Hashem has a way to make sure that everybody has at least one mitzvah under their belt. That's the Rambam's worldview. Right, exactly. All these things could count as these mitzvot.
And the thing is, anything that's a real, it's a science in this world, spiritual science in this case, has an incredible amount of complexity and detail. It
Sure.
can't be real unless it did.
Sure.
Whether a person can actually fulfill all of it, perhaps, I don't know, but like mathematics, the laws are very complex, medicine...
Kabbalah talks about what you're trying to say, which is, we'll get there. The second answer is written by the Reb Magid of Dubno, the famous Dubner Magid. He's one of the early Ashkenazi Magidim, one who traveled around and told parables and stories. And he says, there was once a nephew of a very wealthy man. And this nephew was just starting his life, the equivalent of a college graduate today. And his uncle said, I'm a trader. I want to train you to be a trader, a fabric trader. I'm going to send you across the sea on a trip. I'm going to fund your trip. I will give you an exact amount of money to use. And I have already set up all the appointments for you. On your trip, you just have to go to every single appointment. And you'll come back. I promise you, you'll make money already on this first trip. So the uncle sends him off, and he goes to this town across the sea. It's 3 months. He's in a boat. He's preparing his speeches, counting his whatever he's going to buy, money, so on and so forth. He makes it to that town, and from the second he gets there, someone comes to pick him up, takes him to one meeting, to the next meeting, the third meeting, the fourth meeting, he sleeps on that. Next one, he's there for 2 weeks, and he managed to finish that last meeting a little bit early, and he just said, okay, so I have nothing to do. Let's just see what there is to do in this town. He said, wow, there's some beautiful gardens in this town. There's a nice trail in the ocean that I could have hiked on. And he just falls in love with this town. And he's so angry because he only has 2 hours till his boat leaves. He gets on the boat, and the whole 3 months he's boiling at his uncle. He wasted all my time. I was in this place. I didn't even get to enjoy it. He comes back to his uncle. He says, Uncle, here. Uncle counts. He says, look, you made $300,000 on this trip. He says, wow. He said, Uncle, I'm angry at you. He said, angry? I just made you have some money to start your life with. He said, but Uncle, you sent me on this trip. There were so many nice things to do there. I didn't even have a second of time to do these things. Uncle said, now you know why I set up all your appointments from here. Because I know that if you would have gone there, you would have never done the things you had to do. You would always be in this garden, that trip, this theater, that play. You would come back here broke. Says the Maggid of Dubno, that's the same thing Kadosh Baruch Hu did for us. So of course I can send you down to this world. But I know when you come back here, you're going to come back broke. Because you're going to spend your whole life doing all kinds of things. The gardens, the parks, the theaters, this, that. You're never going to come back here with something practical. So what I did for now, I set up a bunch of appointments. From the way you tie your shoes till the morning, to the way you go to the bathroom, to the which hand you're allowed to use, to what kind of water you wash, to the things you do on Shabbat and at night and the sleep and with it. So, because that way when you come back there for 20 years, I've limited the amount of time that you could waste in this world. And so the details, says the Maggid of Dubno, are there to make us innocent. Because if we really follow Torah, everything in our life would have reason and purpose, and we could come back after 120 and say, Hashem, I did everything I was supposed to do.
But
That's why details are so.
There are times that the balance is not there, and you get so involved in the detail of what
That you forget about the world.
Yeah,
Sure, that's also a problem.
and that's the danger.
Balance, balance. It's a big Jewish word. Balance.
And also people go through difficult times in their life where it's very hard for them to focus.
I mean, he doesn't,
A lot of things, sure.
he doesn't have time to smell the roses.
Yeah. Yes, to smell the roses.
There you go.
What a waste of time.
True.
Yeah. I mean, really, you could be doing so many mitzvahs while you're instead of smelling the roses.
Say a bracha on it.
Oh,
You could say
there you go.
maybe some-
It all depends what you do when you smell that rose. It all depends on what you do. So let's look at the top of 70.
Can't
This-
touch your eyes, your nose, your
This is halakha that we need to know.
yeah. And
Do most people know this halakha? Let's look inside Maran. Lo yiga biyado. A person
Simon says,
should not touch with his hand kodem netilah, before he washes his hands. Lapeh, your mouth. V'lo lachotam, and not to your... You know what a chotam is?
"Tuh,
Chotam,
must be nose,
a nose. V'lo la'oznaim, what are your oznaim?
eyes,
Your ears.
oh ears, and then
V'lo la'inayim, and not to your eyes. My wife the whole day telling my baby words in Yiddish. Eyes, I'll tell you a word in Yiddish. Eugen.
Eugen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
There you go.
So
Oi. Eugen.
Your hand is a hentelach. It sounds like a matzo ball. So,
Kripla.
so before you wash your hands, you cannot touch your eyes, your mouth, your nose, your ears, and your eyes.
It makes sense.
Unless you sneeze.
Because those are the senses that open up to your day
Right.
when you come out of sleep. And you don't want to pollute them.
You should know that according to the Mekubalim, and I don't know that I see this here, the Ben Ish Chai mentions also any other part of your body that has an opening to it. Yeah, any other orifices, yeah. The obvious reason being that those are kind of sensitive parts of your body. They're internal. As much as they're external, they have an opening to the internal. And you don't want that ruach ra'ah to get inside of your body. Let's see. Halakha 23, Chav Gimel. It says in the bold, Nigiyah biyadayim, touching with the hands, kodem antilah, before we wash. Oh, you know what? Let's do the next Maran, because Maran just says what I was going to say. I was going to wait for this for the next halakha, but
Pretty descriptive.
afilu mi shenatal yadav, even one who washes his hands. Lo yimashmesh, he should not touch. Befi hatabat, in the mouth of the ring. I'll explain in a moment. Tamid, all the time. The mouth of the ring is a halachic word for where a person's excrement comes out of. You shouldn't always touch it, even if a person washes hands. Because it could bring a person to such an illness called tachtoniot. I don't know what it is.
Piles.
What's it called?
Piles. That's
Piles.
what's the way it
Okay.
translates it. Yeah.
Meaning it's a sensitive part of the body, a person shouldn't be touching it too much. V'lo yiga b'makom hazaka, and he should not touch in a place where he has just let blood.
Oh, they call it hemorrhoids too. Yeah.
Shemishmush hayad, because touching it with the hand, mazik l'chabura, injures the wound.
Could bleed.
It could bleed. This could mean any place where a person gets a shot, or a person gets somewhere where there's yeah, exactly, anywhere in their body where they've just had a sensitive spot. So you see, Maran seems to be going into this from maybe a more healthy perspective, whereas the Mekubalim understand this also to be from a Ruach Ra'ah perspective.
Now, I missed this section when I was out. When I couldn't get up on the bathroom part. Did you talk about using water for the?
We did. We did.
Which Sephardim are supposed to do.
Everyone, it's the ideal. The question is if anybody's able to really do it.
In terms of the tissues down there, it's much less sensitive.
Right.
And also, of course, in terms of cleanliness.
Right.
That also prevents hemorrhoids.
Cleanliness.
Yeah. And
And with water.
Yes.
We spoke about this then in that class. God willing, those recordings will go on a CD or online.
No, I was out for the potty talk.
Oh, did we record that?
No, no one
I
did.
don't think so. Okay, so we'll have to get
I
your
have
English
one-
notes.
Yeah. So I have a question. I don't understand if you wash before Nitilat Yadayim, you're saying before you make the bracha of Nitilat Yadayim or before you wash when you first get up in the morning without making the bracha?
The first time.
First time.
The first time purifies your hands.
Because you don't, I mean, you're washing your hands, but you're not saying the bracha.
Right, and then when you're in the bathroom, then now you'd be able to
Yeah.
touch wherever you need to
It's
go.
important to spell this out because most people, when they get, they rub their eyes.
In the morning.
Yeah, it's true.
You really
It's
wash your
true.
hands,
That's how you
just
wake
pouring
up.
water over your hands.
Pouring water over your hands.
Just washing your hands?
On a spiritual level, yes.
Yes.
After the bathroom, you wash your hands again with soap on a physical level. And then you again with the cup the second time. Yeah, that's a good question. So, let's read here. Lo yiga, a person should not touch, you see Chav Gimel? Lo yiga, a person should not touch, biyadav, with his hands. Kodem netilat yadayim shacharit, before washing your hands in the morning, lo bepiv, not in his mouth, v'lo be'apo, and not in his nose, lo be'oznav, not in his ears, v'lo be'einav, not in his eyes. By the way, you know people, they lose their balance in their ears, they can make them fall, yeah? The word in Hebrew for ear, ozen, is the same word as izun, is balance, in Hebrew.
How interesting. They had a medical understanding of it.
That's, we say that when Adam HaRishon gave names to things, they weren't nicknames. Like an ear, what does the word ear mean? On its own, nothing. Ear is what we use to refer to something. The ear. In Hebrew, the word that was given by Adam HaRishon, by the first man, it actually means what it is. It's not a nickname for it. An ear means ozen because of this izun, because of this balance. I mean, every word it is the essence of the word, not just a nickname for the word.
Essence of the thing.
Of the thing. Yeah, exactly.
It sounded like a sus.
Meaning Adam is a human being because we come from the earth, Adama. You don't have in English that kind of depth to a word.
So I was wondering, in English, the word ear, the thing you do with the ear is you hear. And H plus EAR is you hear. Is there any linguistic connection between hear and ear?
We were going to ask you that.
I doubt English is that sophisticated.
No, but it could. It could be that in Latin or whatever, there's some root that's connected.
I don't know if it's Latin. I think it's an Anglo-Saxon word. Do you know what you're in? It doesn't sound Latin to me. Because it's one syllable. Latin is multiple.
But you'll find very often these words, they have a reason for why they're called what they're called.
Yeah.
No, but what I learned was that when Adam named everything in the world, like you said, was the essence of it, was in the word itself. And it's like he discovered the letters of foundation of those things.
Sure. Which is why, by the way, there was a famous debate when they started I wouldn't say reviving the Hebrew language. It's a term that secularists like to use because they didn't speak Hebrew until then. But when they started making the Hebrew language a spoken language again in modern Israel, Ben Yehuda and the Chevra were involved in that. There's a big debate. How do you make up new words in Hebrew? When you make up a new word in Hebrew, is it really the same way that Adam HaRishon called something? And if not, can we really consider that Hebrew? This led groups like the Satmars and those say that Hebrew is not even a Jewish language because the words don't even come from Jewish origins. And they separate The Sam Rebbe considered Yiddish to be a Jewish language, believe it or not.
Yiddish is a Jewish language. What
Well,
about
it's a
German?
hybrid of German.
I mean,
So there's and by the way, I'm not from that camp. I'm just sharing with you information, right? They call it, like my wife. You asked my wife, she had Lashon Kodesh, that was holy tongue, and then there was Ivris, there was Hebrew. Right? Those are two different languages.
yeah.
I remember there was once a rabbi who came to speak in when I was in yeshiva, and I don't know if he was like a big ignoramus or just a small ignoramus, but he was not so intelligent. And he said to me, the word tzahoiv, not tzahov, in Hebrew that means
Tahoe.
yellow.
Yellow.
He was basically trying to convince everyone the word tzahov means green. The word yellow means green. Tzahov, yarok is green. Tzahov means yellow. And he had a whole thing he was teaching the whole world. Tzahoiv only means yellow according to those modern Zionists. But according to everyone else, tzahoiv is not a word. And yarok is the word for green, and whatever he was trying to tell us. So, I thought about it. That doesn't make any sense. I opened up an old book of rabbinic writings. The word tzahov has been used in Jewish literature since the creation of the Hebrew language. He just never had a chance to look up Hebrew because he doesn't speak Hebrew. So he made up a whole class based on nothing. And the idea is that no, with the words we come up with for Hebrew words, it's up to the nation to decide if they choose that word or not. Like in Hebrew, there's a word for TV. They call it televizia in Israel. But the word for TV in Hebrew is a re'eh noah, a moving vision. Now the Jewish people chose not to take on that word. They don't like it. Up to them. So do they contain innate holiness? I don't know what to tell you. But the fact that Jewish people chose to use that word to mean something, I think it counts for something. But there was a famous debate, and those of you who understand a little bit of Hebrew might appreciate this more, when they were trying to come up with the word for a baby dog in Hebrew. We don't have a word for that in Hebrew. It's a kelev. A kelev is a dog. And so the modern, Israeli language club at the Hebrew University came up with a klavlav. There's a kelev and a klavlav. It sounds like a cute little doggy, right? That's the word.
So it feminizes the word.
No, it's the same. No, it's still masculine. But that's what they decided to call it. And one of the rabbis who was part of this report says, you guys are just being silly. He said, if that's true, in Hebrew we don't have really a word for the son of a king. A prince. It says, so you have a melech. It says, so what are you going to call the son of a king? A meluchlach. Meluchlach in Hebrew means dirty. He said, you see, if you start making up silly words, that's where it's going to take you. They didn't appreciate it. And so today it's called the klavlav. You have certain words in Hebrew that actually mean what they are. Like the word bakbuk. What is a bakbuk? It's a bottle. Why is bakbuk a bottle? Anybody know?
Because that's what a little baby would call a book.
That's the sound that water makes when it comes out of a bottle. Buk, 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 buk. And because of that, that's why it's called a bakbuk.
That's funny.
It's so arbitrary.
Yeah.
You see this with other languages too, because languages be simpler in general before technological and creation, all these man-made things. So like Chinese, they have to combine, rather than one character meaning one thing, they have to combine 3 or 4 characters to mean like a technical term. So you're finding the words are getting bigger.
Interesting.
Yeah, so this is happening all over.
Interesting.
It's very arbitrary how they choose the words too.
So here, these words are actually, they have some depth. And so in Hebrew, you'll find that words actually mean something. They're not just like random, expressions for things.
It sounds like modern Hebrew, some of that's been lost.
Unfortunately. Especially with the adaptation of non-Jewish words into Hebrew. I mean, not non-Jewish, foreign languages being adapted, which we find in the Talmud. We find in the Talmud they were already using Greek words and Roman words and later Rashi with French words, but that wasn't an ideal. That's what they spoke. It was kind of like when you mix around two languages because you speak both. Someone who speaks Spanish, let's say, will speak English, but they'll throw in a random word in Spanish. Why? We used to call it like Hebrewish when I was growing up. We speak Hebrew with English.
Yeah.
And when I went to school in kindergarten, I was convinced that my teacher knew what a mirpeset was. I thought that was an English word. A mirpeset is a balcony. So I told her I want to go to the mirpeset. She had no idea what I was saying.
So did the Rambam speak an Arabized Hebrew or Hebrew?
The Rambam's Hebrew is it's like a miracle almost. The Rambam's Hebrew is the most similar Hebrew to modern Hebrew in all of our literature. It's as if the Rambam knew the language, but if Israelis were to learn a book right now, between the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch and everything else, they would feel most comfortable in the Rambam. He even sounds like he was more modern. It's not an old Hebrew.
Why is the Zohar in Aramaic?
Because the time when the Zohar was written, the same reason the Talmud is in Aramaic, the Jews were already in
Babylon.
in Bavel, or at least under the heavy influence of Aramaic language. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov writes that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai actually made the Aramaic language holy. He claims that by writing the Zohar in Aramaic, he sanctified the Aramaic language.
So they didn't translate that into Hebrew.
What? The Zohar?
Yeah.
Later in history. There's actually a prohibition on translating the Zohar. In the Zohar, there's a warning against translating the Zohar. But it seems like... To any language.
So
The Zohar says that one who translates the Zohar, it's like taking a flower and picking all the petals off of it. It says there'll still be the flower, it can still grow, it still has pollen, but it has no beauty. And the Zohar says that one who translates me out of my language will be plucking off the petals from this flower.
But what about the tefillot that we say in Aramaic because the angels don't understand?
Tosfot in Tractate Brachot says that's not true. He says that a lot of rabbis say that.
We say the Baruch, when you open the ark.
Right, that's from the Zohar, that prayer. That's a later prayer. But like Kaddish in Aramaic, the reason why it was in Aramaic is not because the angels don't understand. Tosfot disproves that notion. Rather, he says that's the language that people understood. It would be the equivalent of saying prayers in English today.
Right, it was the vernacular.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, people are not so comfortable with doing that.
The English, for some reason, at least the English translations I've seen, you wouldn't want to say them.
Right.
Well,
It sounds very Christianized.
It depends who you are, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
To me it does.
so.
Yours is the glory and of this and that.
It's true. We do use very,
Instead of
in Aramaic, the beauty of Aramaic is that we default back to Hebrew. Like the Zohar is not purely Aramaic. There are words in Hebrew in there because it chose not to translate those words into Aramaic. It chose to keep them in Hebrew. Kind of like what Yiddish did. Certain words, like they don't have a word for wedding, it's just a chasna. Chasna is a messed up Hebrew word, but it's the Hebrew word for chatuna, a wedding. I once made a list, by the way, of all the words Yiddish is messed up in Hebrew. I almost published it, and then certain things happened. I said, it wouldn't be good for the Jewish people if I published this right now. I'll keep it in my phone for now. So,
Volume 1, Volume 2.
it's a lot. For example, how do you say the plural of Shabbat? If you say Shabbos.
Shabbos.
They say Shabbosim.
Shabbos.
Yeah, Shabbosim.
That's actually English almost.
Yeah, no, Shabbos is English.
Yeah.
You add the extra S. But they say Shabbosim, or what do you say the plural of a talis?
Talasim.
Talesim, right?
Talasim.
Now in Hebrew, the plural talit is in feminine, so talitot.
Well,
Shabbat is in feminine, Shabbatot. So how did it become? If you would say Shabbatim, you sound crazy. What does that mean? If you say talitim, that's not a word. For example, how do you say a zchus? A zchus is a merit, right? How do you say the plural of zchus? They say schusim. Schusim. Schusim.
Excuse me.
So the plural of that word is schuyot. Schuyot, not schutim. There's no such a word. So what I was saying is, I'm okay if that's your custom to pronounce something Shabbos. Fine. So say Shabbatos, or say Talitos, or say Zechuyos. But don't say schusim. Where did that word come from? It's like, I'm okay if you pronounce wedding chasuna, but don't say a chasna. What in the world is a chasna?
It's almost like a chaza.
It's just my personal... Okay, but Jewish culture has its style of doing things. I'm not against it. I was going to write this list once and publish it.
At least there's only one koisel.
Koisel. I was once with the chief rabbi of a country in Europe, and we were sitting in the old city square. And these two seminary girls came by and said, "Excuse me, do you know where the Kosel is?" He said, I live in the old city. This is not where the Kosel is. And the poor girls, I think we're going to go to Gehenna just for the story. The poor girls turned around and walked right back out of the old city. What's the Kosel?
Yeah.
So, here. Let's see this next halakha. V'yesh omrim, there are some who say, she'ein le'esor, the one should not prohibit touching these parts of the body, אלא אם כן נוגע באיברים אלו מבפנים. Unless you're actually touching these body parts on the inside.
It would be difficult to touch
let's say going like this to your eye, or like that would be an inter. You're like, is this not allowed touching my nose, or is this not allowed touching my nose?
The actual orifice.
So many rabbis, the Chida, based on the Zohar in certain places, says it's just the inside, not the outside. Like he's sticking his fingers inside of his eye, his hand, literally inside of his eye. V'yesh machmirim, and some are stringent. Shelo yiga be'evarim elu afilu mibachutz, that you cannot touch these things even from the outside. Sorry, this is the Chida's opinion. The Chida says even from the inside. The other rabbis, like the Prisha and the Elia Rabbah and the Morok Tzia, they're the ones who say only from the outside is not a problem. V'tov lachush, and it's good to be careful, 71, the divrehem, to fulfill the words of both opinions. Meaning, it seems like those who say that it's also on the outside is a problem, have a case for their point. Uv'makom tzorech, in a place of need, efshar lismoch al hamekilim, you are allowed to rely on those who are lenient to say only on the inside, not on the outside. V'im nogea be'evarim elu, and if you're touching these body parts, listen to Jewish ingenuity, be'emtzot beged, through a fabric or a cloth, such as your shirt, your kippah, or a glove, or a tissue, a thick tissue, let's say. Yesh lahakel afilu lechatchila. You're allowed to be lenient, even ideally, even in the first case. I mean, you don't have to even be strict not to touch. If you need to rub your eyes, so just do it through your shirt or your pajamas or something, not your hand. Now here's the question. Yeah.
I had a question. Is when you are davening, are you allowed to touch your face or your hair or any part?
Hair, no. Your face, yes. But your hair, not. What does it mean? On top of your hair, you could touch, but inside your hair, you're not.
No,
like if you want to rub your scalp or something, you got to scratch. Let's say that's why Hashem gave us kippas. So you go like this.
Especially with this Velcro.
I knew there was a reason.
They say that in yeshiva, you never want to see the underside of somebody's kippah.
Thank you. That explains why we wear it.
There you go.
Yes.
It's good for that and covering up bald spots.
That takes care
That's
of
what
the
they say.
first couple pages of the class.
Right.
Hayotzeh mi bet hakiseh. Now here's the question. We know that after you go to the bathroom, you also have to wash your hands. Is this only prohibited, touching the body parts, only prohibited in the morning, or every time that you need to wash your hands, meaning like when you go to the bathroom? So hayotzeh mi bet hakiseh, he who leaves the bathroom, hutar lo, he's allowed lagat biyadav, to touch with his hands, kodem netilat yadayim, before he washes them, befiv, in his mouth, u'bapo, in his nose, ve'oznav, in his ear, u've'enav, in his eyes.
Really? You can touch those parts after you go to the bathroom before you wash your hands?
Yes.
Really?
Shelo hichmiru b'zeh, because our rabbis were not stringent on this matter, ela le'inyan netilat yadayim shacharit, only in regards to waking up in the morning, but not in regards to that ruach ra that you have from the bathroom.
Interesting. So there's a different status than
Yes.
from the
Yes.
bathroom than from the night.
Yes. Now his father, Rabbi Yosef, in his questions and answers, Abia Omer dealt with this issue, and that was also the conclusion he came to. That there's a difference between the morning and normal bathroom.
But you wouldn't put food to your mouth until you did it.
No, so we're going to see now all the different details here. Yesh lizaher lechatchila, a person should be careful. Lechatchila, ideally. B'chol oz v'tatzumot, and all manners of carefulness. Shelo lingoa, not to touch b'divrei ma'achal, food, or mishkeh, or drinks, kodem netilat yadayim shacharit, before washing your hands in the morning. V'yesh la'amod al mishpar, and one should be careful here. Bazeh gam li'nyan ktanim, also regarding children, that they shouldn't touch food before they wash their hands. Shitlu yidehem shacharit kodem shigu be'ez davar ma'achal u'mishkeh, that they should wash their hands shacharit before they touch any machal, food, or mishkeh, or drink.
So you think that's why it is recommended that the water be so close to the bed?
Probably so that you also have the least amount of... I mean, there we said that you shouldn't walk a certain amount. But also probably it's the first thing you should do so you don't get yourself in problems
That's what I
elsewhere.
mean, yeah.
Yeah,
It's like
that's a good point.
protection.
That's a good point. It's curious why they didn't bring that down as a reason also. But we have another reason here. Say what's your name? Yaakov?
Yeah.
Divrei Yaakov. We're going to write a commentary now. Shulchan Aruch.
Can publish it.
Umi shelo natal yadav shacharit klal. What if someone didn't wash his hands in the morning at all? Let's say you have a guest who you know doesn't keep Torah mitzvot. They come over to your house, you know they didn't wash their hands in the morning. V'nagah b'dvar ma'achal u'mashkeh, and he touches something, either food or drink. Mikar adin, according to the basic halacha, en oto davar ma'achal u'mashkeh, that food or drink does not become prohibited nesar b'diavad, only it doesn't become completely not kosher. You have the choice to eat it or not. V'machmir b'zeh, but one who's stringent in this matter, b'makom she'en hefsed me'ubeh. If it's something that's not a significant loss of money, tavalav bracha, he should receive a blessing. I want to define here what it means hefsed me'ubeh, significant loss of money. Many people say, "Oh, what's significant? I wouldn't like to lose $100. So less than that, I'll throw it away." Right, so throwing something away, first off, could lead to other isurim, such as wasting food. It could lead to other things like making someone else angry at you, offending the person who's by you. Hefsed me'ubeh, according to some commentaries, is the equivalent of the cost of a liver of a chicken. Not so much money.
So you tell the guy, you touch my food again, you're chopped liver.
Meaning, so even though some people say, "Oh, then liver was much more expensive than it is today," you're not talking about so much money. A few dollars could be enough for you to not throw that food away. Here's what I'm saying. I'll make a difference. Let's say someone touches a glass of water. You're not, "Oh, no, I gotta throw it in the..."
You're talking about the kos or actually the water?
It's a good question. It's a good question. Probably the cup.
Really?
But we're going to see. We're going to see. Probably not. It could be just the water.
And it seems like if it's like an apple, can you wash the apple off?
Well, there's a lot of details. These halachot.
Okay, so we can get to them.
We'll get to all of them. You can. There is such an idea to wash it off, by the way.
And most people don't touch cooked food with their hands.
No.
Right?
Most people.
Yeah, most
You never know.
They don't stick their fingers in the water. or anything, but-
Right. So, this whole halakha, let's leave the details for soon. It's a good point. I just don't want to say anything that's not true. So, I say, let's say you have something, it was a small thing. It was the last slice of your apple. Or it was, okay, so it could be. There's room to be strict, but again, you don't have to be. Just if you want to be careful about this halakha. Let's look at 72. V'im efshar, and if it's possible, you see here in the middle, halakha b'ra. V'im efshar, and if it's possible,
Or below.
below the two lines. Below the two lines.
Yeah. Here.
V'im efshar, and if it's possible, lishtof, to wash, or lehadiach, lishtof is to rinse, or lehadiach, to wash, et oto davar ma'achal, that food, she'nagru bo kodem tat yadayim shacharit, that was touched before we washed our hands. Kagon perot v'chayotze b'zeh, like fruit. Let's say it's an apple. Anything similar to that. An apple. Someone touched it. Yesh le'adicho shalosh pamim. You should wash it 3 times. V'lachar miken, and after this, ein le'achmir b'zeh klal. There's no room to be strict at all. So you can just wash that 3 times. And then it already becomes tahor again, and you don't have to worry about it.
How do you wash 3 times?
Let's hear it.
I'm trying to make sense of that.
We're talking here about spiritual impurity. So to make sense of it means we'd have to understand things that we don't really understand. We're kind of taking the book's word for it. Seems to be that people who didn't wash their hands yet in the morning properly, 3 times, they're passing off impurity to food. That we can choose to be strict whether we want to eat that or not. But in an ideal level, you could just wash it 3 times, and that would be the equivalent of them washing their hands.
Okay.
So you're purifying. It's like
That's what I was asking.
it's like putting the fruit in the mikveh. You're purifying it 3 times. It's a good question. It's good that you brought that up.
You don't have mikvah.
Yeah. V'im yesh safek b'davar. And if there's a doubt, you're not sure, imotosh naga b'hem, if that person who touched them, natal yadav shacharit k'halacha, wash their hands in the morning properly, like halacha. And sarich lachmir, you don't have to be strict, l'shotfam u'lehadicham b'mayim, to wash them in water. Meaning, so long as it's not for certain that they didn't wash their hands, it could be. You don't know. You don't have to go and say, "Oh, did you wash your hands today?"
Yeah.
You don't have to ask. If you can assume that probably yes, probably you don't have to be strict about this regard. Only about a person you know for sure they didn't wash their hands in the morning.
You can ask him.
Let's say you saw your guest roll off the couch and I don't know, take something of it, so you know this person didn't wash their hands.
One question they will throw out. They will leave the house.
What?
If the Beit HaMikdash was standing, would a lot of these halachot be
More strict, yes, absolutely. Could be not necessarily about the morning, not the, yes, it's true. A lot of the reasons we're lenient here is because many people say that the koach hatuma, that impurity that we have, is much weaker nowadays than what it used to be. We're not on that level today where everything is pure, impure. Like we don't even know. No, we're all of us are tmei mitim. All of us have come in contact with a dead body. You've been to a funeral. Even if you touch someone who touched a dead body, even if you touch someone who touched someone who touched a dead body, that makes you a tamei mit. That's why in the Torah, someone who touched a dead body removes himself from the community until it's like electricity. I mean, it's contagious. These things they pass on. It's like, and we're not careful about those halachot today. We're not. Like a kohen, for example. A kohen is not allowed to go to a cemetery. That's a very good one. But I don't know. Exactly. I'm not a kohen, so I don't know to tell you. I have a friend who's a rabbi, who's a kohen. He knows halachot much better. But I can imagine the kohanim are not careful to not touch people who were at a cemetery, because we're not in the we're not in the temple right now. That's not where we're holding. But the very basic of they shouldn't become impure, that they have to be careful about. That they have to be careful about.
The moral of the story is don't bring food into the bedroom.
Yeah, or at least be very careful when you do.
Yeah.
You should know that this whole idea of there being less impurity today is not a good thing. We know that holiness and unholiness are connected to each other. In a place where there's more holiness, there's also more potential for lack of holiness. In a place where there's a lot less holiness, there's also less potential for a lack of holiness. For example, we believe that the Yetzer Hara, your evil inclination, is strongest in Israel. And even stronger in Jerusalem. And even stronger in the old cities. Even stronger on the Temple Mount. And even stronger in the Holy of Holies. Because the more holy something is, the more potential for unholiness there is. Like we believe that those who are holiest, people who are tzaddikim, they have the highest potential to do things that are wrong.
It's like the story of when the Rabbanim saw the Yetzer Hara was a flaming lion, and then the chicken stopped laying eggs. It destroyed the ability for creating a
It's going to make for an interesting sound. It did. It took away. Listen, I was once with a certain posek. He said, I have the ability to explain to somebody their Yetzer Hara in a way that they would never want to be with a lady again. He said, but I would never do it. He said, because you would destroy the world. But you have the ability to get rid of certain Yetzers. But here there's an intrinsic, wherever there's more holiness, there's also the potential for lack of holiness. There are some people tell me that the things they think about when they're in synagogue, they never think about at home.
Right.
Because that's the nature of a place.
That's why
And so,
were those belts.
so the fact that there's less holiness today, it doesn't show that it doesn't mean well for us. It means there's also the fact that there's less impurity also means there's less purity today.
You do think more sometimes about impure things in Beit Knesset, but you're also much more aware of the implications.
Yes, it's true. It's also true.
So you're much less likely to do as a more
I
casual
was
situation.
going to give you an example about this. Okay, so These are things that we should know. Where purity, impurity, they're directly. Oh, there's a famous story about the Satmar Rebbe.
Where's the time now?
We're over the clock. I know. Right now we're going to stop. The Satmar Rebbe came to his Hasidim one day. They said, Hasidim, you should know, there are no more mitnagdim. There are no more opponents to Hasidim left in the whole world. Satmar is a big Chassid. They're cheering. Woo! Yeah. There are no more opponents to Hasidim. Yeah, it's amazing. They said, don't be happy. He said, why not? He said, the reason why there are no more opponents is because there are no more real Hasidim anymore either. And then he walked away. So just because there's less holiness, less impurity, great. It's not a great thing. It also means that there's less purity as well. God willing, we'll continue these halachot next week on Monday. B'ezrat Hashem.
Do you find